They tried to declare me incompetent to take my money. Now I've proven their incompetence in court. Sometimes the loudest betrayals are the ones masked as love. I was 63 when I discovered the truth. The children I'd raised, protected, and supported were plotting behind closed doors to take everything from me. My name is Evelyn Carter, and for decades, I was the glue of this family, the invisible backbone they leaned on but never saw. I invite you to walk with me as I unravel the web of secrets and reclaim my dignity, piece by piece. Where are you watching from? Don't forget to subscribe to the channel for more stories that reveal the real strength hidden behind quiet faces. Now, let's begin this journey together. Mom, we need to talk about your finances, Michael said, standing in my kitchen doorway, with that serious expression he'd worn since childhood, when he wanted something important. I looked up from the morning dishes, soap suds still clinging to my hands. What about them, dear? Well, you're getting older, and we just want to make sure everything's in order. He stepped closer, his voice taking on that patronizing tone I'd grown to recognize. Lisa and David agree. Maybe it's time someone else handled the checkbook. I dried my hands slowly, buying time to process what he was really saying. I've been managing our family's finances for 40 years, Michael, since before you were born. I know, Mom, but that's exactly the point. Lisa appeared behind him, her smile too bright, too forced. You've done so much for so long. Don't you think you deserve a break? A break? As if managing my own money was some burden I needed relief from. I appreciate your concern, I said carefully, but I'm perfectly capable of... Are you, though? Michael interrupted. Yesterday, you asked me the same question 3 times about Dad's old tools in the garage. My chest tightened. I had asked about Frank's tools, but only because I was trying to decide whether to donate them. Michael was twisting my thoughtfulness into confusion. That's not the same thing as being unable to balance a checkbook, I replied. David shuffled in from the living room, avoiding my eyes as usual. Mom, we're not trying to take anything away from you. We just want to help. Help with what exactly? With everything, Lisa said, gesturing around the kitchen. This house is so big for just you. The yard work, the bills, the maintenance. It's overwhelming. Overwhelming. Another word that stung because it reduced my life to a series of burdens. I manage just fine, I said. Ruth helps with the heavy gardening, and I have services for everything else. Ruth's 78 years old, Michael pointed out. What happens when she can't help anymore? I felt cornered, outnumbered by my own children in my own kitchen. This wasn't a conversation. It was an intervention. What exactly are you proposing? I asked. Michael exchanged glances with his siblings. We think it might be time to look into some living options, places where you'd have help when you need it, but still maintain your independence. Living options, assisted living. They weren't even brave enough to say it directly. You want me to sell my home, I said flatly. We want you to be safe, Lisa said, reaching for my hand. I pulled back instinctively. I am safe. I'm healthy. My mind is sharp, and I've been taking care of myself, and all of you, for decades. Mom, please don't make this harder than it needs to be, David said quietly, harder than it needs to be, as if my resistance to their plans was unreasonable. I need some air, I said, walking past them toward the back door. We're not done talking about this, Michael called after me. Yes, we are, I replied without turning round. I stepped onto the back porch, where Frank used to drink his morning coffee. The October air was crisp, carrying the scent of Ruth's chrysanthemums from next door. I gripped the railing, trying to steady my breathing. They thought I was weak. They thought I was fading, becoming someone who needed managing instead of someone who had spent her life managing everyone else. When Michael was 8 and broke his arm, who had driven him to the hospital while Frank was at work? When Lisa went through her divorce, who had let her and the kids move in for 6 months? When David lost his job last year, who had quietly transferred money into his account without making him ask? I heard their voices through the kitchen window, hushed but urgent. "She's more stubborn than we thought," Lisa was saying. "We might need to be more direct." Michael replied, "More direct." I shivered, and it wasn't from the cold. Ruth appeared at the fence line, pruning shears in hand. "Morning, Evelyn. Everything all right over there?" "Just family discussing family things," I said, forcing a smile. She studied my face with the kind of attention that comes from 40 years of friendship. "Well, if you need someone to talk to who isn't family, you know where to find me." I nodded, grateful for her discretion. Ruth had always understood that sometimes the people who love you most can hurt you deepest. When I went back inside, my children were gone. The kitchen felt different somehow. Violated. I noticed Michael had left some papers on the counter. Brochures for senior living communities, all with names like Golden Years Manor and Sunset Gardens. I gathered them up and dropped them in the trash, but the message was clear. They weren't asking for my opinion. They were preparing to make decisions for me. That evening I sat in Frank's old chair, looking through photo albums. Pictures of birthday parties I'd planned, holidays I'd hosted, graduations I'd attended, weddings I'd helped pay for. In almost every photo I was there, but somehow invisible. The one behind the camera, serving the cake, making sure everyone else was happy. When had I become so invisible that my own children couldn't see me anymore? I closed the album and made myself a promise. They thought they knew what was best for me, but they had forgotten something important. I had raised them. I knew exactly how their minds worked, and I was far from finished using mine. "Evelyn, dear, you look tired," Dr. Morrison said during my routine checkup the following week. "Are you sleeping well?" "Well enough," I replied, though it wasn't entirely true. My children's words had been echoing in my mind, disrupting my rest. "Any concerns I should know about? Changes in memory, confusion, anything like that?" I hesitated. "My children seem to think I'm having some difficulties." Dr. Morrison raised an eyebrow. "What kind of difficulties?" "They're worried about my memory, my ability to manage on my own." "I see." He made a note in my chart. "Have you noticed any problems yourself?" "No, but they're convinced I'm becoming—" I searched for the right word. "Incompetent." "Based on what evidence?" I explained Michael's comment about the tools, Lisa's concerns about the house, their general attitude that I needed protecting. From my own life. Dr. Morrison listened patiently, then smiled. "Evelyn, I've been your doctor for 15 years. Your blood pressure is excellent. Your cognitive function is sharp, and you're in better shape than most people 20 years younger. If your children have specific concerns, perhaps they should accompany you to an appointment so we can address them directly." "They think they're helping," I said. "I'm sure they do. But help shouldn't feel like having your autonomy stripped away." His words stayed with me as I drove home. Autonomy. The right to make my own choices, to control my own life. When had I lost that without even realizing it? At home, I found Lisa waiting in my driveway. "Mom, we need to talk," she said. getting out of her car. About what now? I've been doing some research. She followed me to the front door, clutching a folder. There are some really nice places nearby. Places where you could have your own apartment but still have help when you need it. I unlocked the door without responding. This one has a beautiful garden, she continued, following me inside. And they have activities. Book clubs, art classes, even dancing. I have book clubs here. I have Ruth's garden next door. And if I want to dance, I can dance in my own living room. But what if something happens? What if you fall and no one's around to help? Then I'll get up, I said simply, just like I always have. Lisa spread brochures across my dining room table. Just look at these, please, for me. I glanced at the glossy photos of smiling seniors playing cards and doing water aerobics. They all looked perfectly pleasant and perfectly institutional. Lisa, why are you really here? She looked startled by the direct question. I told you. No, you told me what you wanted me to believe. But I'm asking what's really going on. She fidgeted with her purse strap. Michael's concerned about the house. What about it? It's so valuable now, with the market the way it is. And maintaining it costs so much. Property taxes, utilities, repairs. The truth was finally emerging. This wasn't about my safety or well-being. This was about money. Whose money am I spending, Lisa? Well, someday it'll be. Someday it'll be yours, I finished. Is that what you're worried about? That I might spend your inheritance keeping myself comfortable in my own home? That's not what I meant. Then what did you mean? She stared at the brochures, unable to meet my eyes. Michael thinks we should have a family meeting, all of us together, to discuss options. A family meeting where you've already decided what the options are? We just want what's best for you. Have you asked me what I think is best for or me? We're asking now. I gathered up the brochures and handed them back to her. What's best for me is being treated like an adult capable of making my own decisions. What's best for me is having my children trust that I raised them well, enough to respect their mother. Lisa's eyes filled with tears. We do respect you. No, you don't. You respect the idea of me, the mother who sacrificed everything for her children. But you don't respect me as a person with her own thoughts and preferences and rights. Mom, I think you should go now, I said gently but firmly. After she left, I called Ruth. Can you come over? I need a friend. She arrived within minutes, carrying a plate of her famous oatmeal cookies and a pot of coffee. They're trying to put me away, I told her, explaining the entire situation. Ruth listened without interrupting, nodding occasionally. When I finished, she was quiet for a long moment. You know, she finally said, when Harold was alive, his kids from his first marriage tried something similar. They thought I was after his money, thought he was too old to make good decisions. What did you do? I helped him show them they were wrong. We got everything documented. His mental state, his wishes, his reasons for his choices. By the time we were done, they realized they'd underestimated both of us. How do I show my children they're underestimating me? Ruth smiled. Same way you've handled every other challenge in your life, Evelyn. One step at a time, with more strength than they expect. That night, I started a journal. If my children thought my memory was failing, I'd document everything. Every conversation, every manipulation, every attempt to make me doubt myself. I also called my bank and asked for copies of all my statements for the past 5 years. If they wanted to discuss my finances, I'd be prepared with facts instead of their assumptions. I was done being passive. I was done being the quiet pillar that everyone leaned on but no one really saw. It was time to remind my children exactly who they were dealing with and exactly who had taught them everything they knew about determination. "Mom, we've scheduled a family meeting for Sunday," Michael announced when he called Thursday evening. "David's coming, and Lisa will be there. We need to settle this." "Settle what exactly?" "Your living situation. We can't keep dancing around this issue." I gripped the phone tighter. I wasn't aware we were dancing around anything. I thought I'd made my position clear. "Your position isn't realistic," he said with that edge of impatience he'd inherited from his father. "You're being stubborn." "I'm being reasonable. There's a difference. Mom, I've done the math. Between the property taxes, utilities, maintenance, and everything else, you're spending almost $3,000 a month just to live in that house. It's my money to spend. But it doesn't make financial sense. You could live comfortably somewhere else for half that cost and have money left over for other things. Other things. He meant money left over for them. What if I don't want to live somewhere else for half the cost? What if I want to live in my own home that I've worked 40 years to pay for?" "Then you're being selfish." The word hit me like a slap. Selfish. Me, who had given everything to this family, who had never bought anything for myself without first making sure everyone else's needs were met. Selfish, I repeated slowly. Yes, selfish. You're thinking only about what you want, not about what's practical or what's best for the family. Michael, I want you to listen to me very carefully. I am not being selfish for wanting to live in my own home. I am not being unreasonable for wanting to manage my own finances. And I am not being stubborn for refusing to let my children make major life decisions for me. Sunday, Mom, 2:00. We're having this conversation whether you like it or not. He hung up before I could respond. I stared at the phone, shaking with anger and hurt. Then I did something I hadn't done in years. I called in reinforcements. "Ruth, can you be here Sunday afternoon? I think I'm going to need a witness." "Of course, dear. What are you planning?" "I'm planning to remind my children that I'm still their mother, not their ward." Sunday arrived gray and cold. Ruth came early, helping me set out coffee and sandwiches. At exactly 2:00, my children arrived together, a unified front. "Ruth," Michael said coolly, "I didn't realize you'd be joining us." "I invited her," I said. "Since this is apparently an intervention, I wanted a neutral party present." "This isn't an intervention," Lisa protested. "It's a family discussion. About my life, without my input, based on decisions you've already made. That sounds like an intervention to me." We settled in the living room, the atmosphere tense. Michael pulled out a folder. They all seem to have folders these days. "Mom, we've been patient, but this has gone on long enough," he began. "We've found several excellent facilities." "Stop," I said quietly. "With different price points and amenities depending on your preferences." "Stop," I said more firmly. "And we think Sunset Manor would be perfect. They have—" "Stop." This time I raised my voice, and everyone fell silent. "Did any of you think to ask me what I want before making these plans?" "We're telling you what we think is best," David said. "Based on what? Based on your assumption that I'm incompetent? Based on your concern about my spending your inheritance?" "No one said anything about inheritance," Lisa said quickly. "You didn't have to say it. It's written all over your faces every time you mention money." Michael leaned forward. "Mom, you're not thinking clearly." "My thinking is perfectly clear. Clearer than it's been in years, actually." I stood up and walked to my desk, pulling out the journal I'd been keeping and the bank statements I'd requested. "Since you're so concerned about my mental state and my finances, let's review the facts." I opened the journal. 3 weeks ago, Michael, you told me I'd asked about Dad's tools 3 times. The truth is, I asked once, whether you wanted them or if I should donate them. You turned that single question into evidence of memory loss." Michael's face reddened. "That's not—" "2 weeks ago, Lisa, you brought me brochures and told me you were researching options. You didn't research anything. You made decisions and then tried to sell them to me." I turned to David. "And you've been unusually interested in my banking passwords lately. Care to explain why?" David looked at the floor. "I was just trying to help." "Help with what?" "I pay my bills on time. I've never overdrawn an account. And I have more money saved than when your father died. So, what exactly do I need help with?" I opened the bank statements. These show every transaction for the past 5 years. Would you like to know what the largest withdrawals were for? Michael's son's college tuition, $15,000. Lisa's divorce lawyer, $8,000. David's car repair when he was between jobs, $3,000. I've given this family over $50,000 in the past 5 years, and not once did any of you question my mental capacity when I was writing those checks. The room was dead silent. "You want to know what's really going on here?" I continued. "You've decided I'm a problem that needs solving instead of a person who deserves respect. You've convinced yourselves that managing my life is an act of love when really it's an act of control." "Mom," Lisa whispered, tears in her eyes. "I'm not finished." I pulled out another document. This is a letter from Dr. Morrison stating that I am in excellent health, mentally and physically. This is a statement from my accountant, confirming that my finances are in perfect order. And this, I held up a legal document, is a durable power of attorney, updated last week, naming Ruth as my healthcare proxy and financial advocate should I ever become truly incapacitated. Michael's face went white. "You can't be serious." "I'm completely serious. If the day comes when I truly need help making decisions, Ruth will help me make them, not you." "She's not even family," David protested. "Neither are you, apparently. Family doesn't treat each other like burdens to be managed." Ruth spoke for the first time. "I've watched this woman raise 3 children, support them through every crisis, and sacrifice her own dreams to make sure they had everything they needed. The fact that you can't see her strength is your failing, not hers." Michael stood abruptly. "This is ridiculous. We're trying to help, and you're treating us like enemies." "I'm treating you like adults who need to learn that love doesn't mean control," I replied, "and respect isn't optional." "Fine," he said, heading for the door. "But don't expect us to bail you out when this independent streak of yours gets you into trouble." "I wouldn't dream of it," I called after him. Lisa and David lingered, both looking lost and ashamed. "Mom," Lisa said softly, "we really were trying to help." "I know, sweetheart, but help looks different when you're on the receiving end. Real help asks what someone needs instead of deciding for them." After they left, Ruth and I sat in the quiet living room. "Well," she said, "that was quite a speech. I probably burned some bridges, maybe, But you built something stronger. You built respect for yourself. I nodded, feeling drained but somehow lighter. For the first time in months, I felt like myself again. The woman who had raised 3 children, buried a husband, and managed a household for 4 decades wasn't going anywhere, and it was time everyone remembered that. I need to see a lawyer, I told Ruth the next morning over coffee. Someone who specializes in elder law. Do you think it'll come to that? Michael's not going to give up easily. He's too much like his father. Once he sets his mind on something, he pursues it relentlessly. Ruth stirred her coffee thoughtfully. Harold's son tried to have him declared incompetent when he wouldn't sell the farm. It got ugly. What happened? Harold was prepared. He had documentation, witnesses, medical evaluations. Everything he needed to prove he was still sharp. The judge threw the case out and warned the son about frivolous lawsuits. Do you know Harold's lawyer? Actually, yes. Bennett Miller. No relation to me, despite the name. He's retired now, but he might have recommendations. I wrote down the name. I'll call him today. Evelyn, Ruth said gently. Are you sure you want to go down this road? Legal battles with family can get very messy. They're the ones threatening legal action, not me. I'm just preparing to defend myself. That afternoon, I called Bennett Miller. His voice was warm and professional when I explained my situation. Mrs. Carter, I remember your husband, Frank. Good man. I'm sorry to hear about your family troubles. Can you recommend someone who can help me? Actually, I'd like to handle this myself, if you're comfortable with that. I've been semi-retired, but cases like yours, well, they remind me why I became a lawyer in the first place. We scheduled a meeting for the following day. Bennett's office was small but elegant, filled with law books and family photos. He was perhaps 70, with kind eyes and an air of competence that immediately put me at ease. Tell me everything, he said, settling behind his desk with a legal pad. I explained the whole story. The interventions, the brochures, Michael's accusations, the family meeting. Bennett listened without interrupting, taking notes occasionally. Have any of your children mentioned guardianship or conservatorship specifically? He asked. No, but Michael keeps saying I need someone else to handle my finances. That could be heading toward a conservatorship petition. Have you had any recent medical evaluations? Dr. Morrison examined me last week. He said I'm in excellent health. Good. We'll want a comprehensive evaluation, cognitive testing, the works, preventive documentation. Bennett explained the legal landscape, the types of challenges I might face, and the evidence we'd need to counter them. The most important thing is establishing your competence beyond any reasonable doubt, he said. Medical evaluations, financial records, character witnesses, evidence of sound decision-making. What about the power of attorney I gave Ruth? Smart move. It shows you're thinking ahead while maintaining control. But we should expand it. Create a comprehensive advance directive that addresses every possible scenario. Over the next week, I followed Bennett's advice methodically. I underwent extensive cognitive testing with a geriatric psychiatrist who specialized in competency evaluations. I organized 5 years of financial records, showing consistent, responsible money management. I obtained written statements from Dr. Morrison, my accountant, and several neighbors attesting to my mental sharpness and independence. Ruth helped me document everything, a day-by-day log of my activities, decisions, and interactions. We wanted to create an irrefutable picture of a competent, autonomous adult. This feels like preparing for war, I told her as we organized the documents. Sometimes defending your dignity requires strategy. She replied. Meanwhile, my children's pressure. Campaign intensified. Lisa called every other day with concerns about my isolation. David stopped by unexpectedly, asking pointed questions about my daily routine. Michael sent articles about senior safety and the dangers of aging in place. I documented every interaction, every manipulation attempt, every effort to undermine my confidence. Bennett had advised me to be thorough. If this went to court, we'd need evidence of their behavior pattern. They're building a case, too, Bennett warned during one of our meetings, probably documenting what they see as evidence of decline or poor judgment. Let them, I said. I have nothing to hide. But privately, I worried. My children knew me well. They'd raised concerns that sounded reasonable on the surface. What if they could make me appear incompetent to people who didn't know me? Evelyn, Bennett said, as if reading my thoughts. Incompetence has legal standards. It's not about forgetting where you put your keys or asking the same question twice. It's about inability to understand and make reasoned decisions about your life and finances. From everything I've seen, you're nowhere near that threshold. I started attending community events, library board meetings, volunteer activities, social gatherings. If my children claimed I was isolated and withdrawn, I'd have witnesses to the contrary. At the Senior Center's book club, I met Margaret, a retired teacher who'd fought a similar battle with her stepchildren. The hardest part, she told me, was realizing that people I loved were treating me like an adversary. But you can't let that stop you from protecting yourself. How did you get through it? One day at a time. And by remembering that setting, boundaries isn't cruel. It's necessary. I also reached out to my grandchildren directly. Grace, Lisa's youngest, seemed especially receptive. Grandma, why is everyone acting so weird lately? She asked during one of our phone calls. What do you mean, sweetheart? Mom and Uncle Michael keep talking about you like you're sick or something. But you seem fine to me. I chose my words carefully. Sometimes adults disagree about what's best. I just want everyone to remember that I'm still capable of making my own choices. That makes sense. Can I still come visit you? Anytime you want, Grace. This house will always be open to you. Those conversations with Grace reminded me what was at stake. This wasn't just about money or property. It was about relationships, about the kind of grandmother I wanted to be, about the legacy I'd leave behind. 3 weeks into my preparation, Michael called, with an ultimatum. Mom, we're filing a petition for conservatorship. We've spoken to a lawyer and we have grounds. What grounds? Inability to make sound financial decisions, social isolation, resistance to reasonable care suggestions. My heart pounded, but I kept my voice steady. Michael, you're making a mistake. No, Mom. We're protecting you from yourself. You're destroying our relationship. That's a risk we're willing to take. After he hung up, I called Bennett, immediately. They've filed, I told him. Expected. Are you ready? I looked around my living room, my home, my sanctuary, my life's work, and felt a fierce determination rise in my chest. I'm ready. The battle for my life was about to begin. The petition was filed yesterday, Bennett told me when I arrived at his office the following morning. They're claiming you lack the capacity to manage your financial affairs and make decisions about your living situation. I sat down heavily, the reality hitting me fully for the first time. My own children are trying to have me declared incompetent. Their lawyer is Gerald Hoffman. He's competent but not particularly creative. The petition lists several concerning incidents. Your refusal to consider safer living arrangements, what they call excessive, spending on home maintenance, and alleged memory issues. Memory issues? Bennett read from the document. Repetitive questions about deceased husband's belongings, confusion about dates and appointments, inability to recognize the impracticality of current living situation. I felt sick. They'd twisted every normal interaction into evidence of decline. There's more, Bennett continued. They claim you've become isolated from family and friends, resistant to help, and suspicious of their motives without cause. They made me suspicious by acting suspiciously. I know, and that's exactly what we'll argue. But Evelyn, I need to prepare you. This will get very personal. They'll scrutinize every aspect of your life. What happens next? They'll request an emergency hearing for temporary conservatorship while the full evaluation is conducted. We need to respond quickly and decisively. Bennett explained our strategy. We'd file a comprehensive response showing my competence, then request an independent evaluation rather than accepting the court's default assessor. I've already arranged for Dr. Patricia Hendricks to evaluate you if the court approves. She's one of the most respected geriatric psychiatrists in the state. What about character witnesses? We'll need several. People who interact with you regularly and can testify to your mental sharpness and decision-making ability. I made a list. Ruth, Dr. Morrison, Margaret from book club, Grace if the court would allow it, and Mrs. Patterson from the library, board. That evening, Lisa called. Mom, I need you to know this wasn't my idea. But you're supporting it. I'm supporting what's best for you. Lisa, do you honestly believe I'm incompetent? A long pause. I think you're scared of change, and sometimes fear can make us make poor decisions. What poor decisions have I made? Refusing to consider other living options, shutting us out when we try to help. I didn't shut you out. I disagreed with you. There's a difference. Mom, please don't fight this. Let the court evaluate. Everything objectively. If you really are competent, they'll see that. And if they decide I'm not, then what? You all divide up my life between you? We just want you safe and cared for. I am safe. I am cared for. By myself, which is apparently the problem. After she hung up, I called Grace. Grandma? Mom said I shouldn't talk to you right now, but I wanted to make sure you're okay. I'm fine, sweetheart, but I might need your help with something. What kind of help? I might need you to tell some people the truth about how I am when we spend time together. Would you be willing to do that? Of course, Grandma. Why is everyone acting like you're different? You're exactly the same as you've always been. Sometimes adults complicate things unnecessarily. That's stupid. Despite everything, I smiled. Yes, it is. The next morning, Ruth and I met with Bennett to prepare for the emergency hearing. The key is to show that any restrictions on Mrs. Carter's autonomy would cause more harm than good, Bennett explained. We need to demonstrate that she's not just competent, but actively thriving in her current situation. When is the hearing? Ruth asked. Friday, 3 days from now. 3 days to prove I deserved to control my own life. I spent those days gathering every piece of documentation we might need. Bank statements showing responsible financial management. Medical records showing excellent health. Letters from community organizations showing active involvement. A detailed log of my daily activities showing independence and sound judgment. Thursday evening, David called. Mom, I wanted to apologize. For what? For all of this. I never wanted it to go this far. Then why didn't you speak up? Because Michael convinced me you were, I don't know, struggling more than you were letting on. David, when have I ever hidden struggles from you children? Never. You've always been honest with us. Then why would I start hiding things now? A long silence. I don't know. I think I got scared when Michael started talking about what would happen if something happened to you. And you decided the solution was to take away my right to make my own choices. I'm sorry, Mom. I really am. Will you testify on my behalf? I can't go against Michael and Lisa. I'm not asking you to go against them. I'm asking you to tell the truth about my mental state. I need to think about it. After he hung up, I realized I was truly on my own. My children had chosen sides, and I wasn't on theirs. Friday morning, I dressed carefully in my best navy suit, the same one I'd worn to Frank's funeral. Ruth picked me up and we drove to the courthouse in nervous silence. The hearing room was smaller than I'd expected. Michael, Lisa, and their lawyer sat on one side. Bennett, Ruth, and I sat on the other. David wasn't there. Judge Patricia Walsh was perhaps 50, with sharp eyes and an air of no-nonsense efficiency. She reviewed the petition while we waited. Mr. Hoffman, she finally said, this is your petition. Present your case. Hoffman stood. Your Honor, we're seeking emergency temporary conservatorship for Mrs. Evelyn Carter, based on her inability to make sound decisions regarding her financial and personal welfare. He outlined their case. My refusal to consider appropriate living arrangements. My excessive spending on home maintenance. My increasing isolation from family. Mrs. Carter has become suspicious and resistant to family assistance, showing poor judgment and possible cognitive decline, he concluded. Judge Walsh turned to Bennett. Mr. Miller. Bennett stood with quiet confidence. Your Honor, this petition is based on the adult children's disagreement with their mother's choices, not on any evidence of actual incompetence. Mrs. Carter is a 73-year-old woman in excellent health who has managed her affairs responsibly for decades. He presented our documentation methodically. Medical evaluations, financial records, character statements, evidence of community involvement. Mrs. Carter's only poor judgment, Bennett concluded, has been refusing to let her children make her life decisions for her. That's not incompetence. That's independence. Judge Walsh reviewed our materials, then looked directly at me. Mrs. Carter, I'd like to hear from you directly. Why do you believe this petition is inappropriate? I stood, my heart pounding but my voice steady. Your Honor, I've been making my own decisions for 73 years. I've raised 3 children, managed a household, supported my family through every crisis. I'm in excellent health. My finances are in perfect order, and I'm actively involved in my community. My children disagree with my choice to remain in my own home. But disagreement isn't grounds for removing someone's civil rights. What would you say to their concerns about your safety and welfare? I'd say their concerns are based on assumptions, not evidence. I've never had a serious accident. I've never missed a bill payment. And I've never made a decision that harmed myself or others. Their real concern seems to be that I won't do what they want me to do. Judge Walsh made notes, then addressed both lawyers. I'm ordering a comprehensive evaluation by an independent examiner before making any decisions about conservatorship. Mrs. Carter will retain full autonomy, pending the results of that evaluation. Relief flooded through me, but I knew this was just the first battle. As we left the courthouse, Michael caught up with me in the parking lot. "This isn't over, Mom." "No," I replied quietly. "I suppose it isn't." But for the first time in months, I felt like I might actually win. "The evaluation is scheduled for next week," Bennett told me over the phone. "Dr. Hendricks will conduct comprehensive cognitive testing, review your medical history, and assess your living situation." "What exactly will she be looking for? Evidence of dementia, depression, inability to understand consequences of decisions, susceptibility to undue influence. Basically anything that would indicate you can't manage your own affairs." I scheduled the appointment for Tuesday morning, then spent the weekend reviewing everything with Ruth. We went through my daily routines, financial decisions, and social activities, making sure I could articulate the reasoning behind my choices. Monday evening, Lisa arrived unannounced. "Mom, can we talk privately?" "Of course." I led her to the living room, noting how she glanced around as if cataloging problems. "I wanted to give you one more chance to reconsider." "Reconsider what?" "This whole legal battle. It's tearing the family apart." "I didn't start this legal battle, Lisa." She sat on the edge of the sofa, looking uncomfortable. "Michael thinks you might have early-stage dementia. He's found articles about how it can make people paranoid and resistant to help." "Do you think I have dementia?" "I think you're different than you used to be. More defensive." "I'm defensive because I'm being attacked." "We're not attacking you. We're trying to protect you." I studied my daughter's face, seeing the genuine worry mixed with something else. Guilt, maybe, or fear. "Lisa, what aren't you telling me?" She looked away. "Michael's hired a private investigator." My blood ran cold. "To investigate what?" "Your daily activities. He wants documentation of any irregularities." "Someone's been watching me?" "Just for a few days, to see if you're really as independent as you claim." I felt violated, angry, and oddly vindicated all at once. If they were spying on me, they'd see exactly what I'd been telling them. A competent woman living her life. Normally. "Lisa, do you realize how wrong this is?" "Michael says it's necessary. That you're good at putting on an act when family's around." "An act?" "Lisa, this is my life, not a performance." She started to cry. "I don't know what to believe anymore. Michael's so convinced, and David goes along with whatever Michael says, and you're so angry all the time now." "I'm angry because my children are treating me like an enemy instead of their mother." "We're scared, Mom. Scared of what happens if something goes wrong, and we weren't there to prevent it." I sat beside her, my anger softening slightly. "Sweetheart, being scared doesn't give you the right to control someone else's life." "But what if we're right? What if you do need more help than you're willing to admit?" "Then you trust me, to recognize that and ask for help when I need it. The way I've trusted you to make your own decisions, even when I disagreed with them." Lisa wiped her eyes. "Michael won't give up, you know. He's convinced he's saving you." "From what?" "From yourself." After she left, I called Bennett immediately. "They've hired a private investigator to spy on me." "That's actually good news," Bennett said, surprising me. "How is that good news?" "Because if they're documenting your daily activities, they're creating evidence of your competence. Unless you're doing something genuinely concerning, surveillance will backfire on them." "Should I change my routine?" "Absolutely not. Live normally. Let them document a competent woman managing her life independently." The next morning, I made a point of following my usual Tuesday routine, though now I was hyper-aware that someone might be watching. I drove to the grocery store, chatted with the cashier about the weather, stopped at the bank to make a deposit, and met Ruth for lunch at our favorite cafe. I feel like I'm performing my own life, I told Ruth over soup and sandwiches. Maybe that's not such a bad thing. Sometimes we need to pay attention to what we're actually doing to realize how well we're doing it. That afternoon, Dr. Hendricks arrived at my house for the evaluation. She was younger than I'd expected, perhaps 45, with a warm but professional demeanor. Mrs. Carter, this evaluation will take several hours. We'll cover cognitive function, emotional state, decision-making capacity, and your understanding of your current situation. The testing was exhaustive. Memory exercises, problem-solving scenarios, questions about my medical history, finances, and relationships. Dr. Hendricks asked me to explain my reasoning for various decisions, why I wanted to stay in my house, how I managed my money, what plans I had for the future. Can you tell me about your relationship with your children? She asked. It's complicated right now. They think they're protecting me, but they're actually hurting me. How so? They've decided I'm incompetent based on disagreeing with their suggestions. They're treating symptoms of their anxiety as evidence of my decline. That's an interesting perspective. Can you elaborate? I explained how their fears about my future had translated into attempts to control my present. How their love had become indistinguishable from manipulation. They've forgotten that respecting someone means respecting their right to make choices you disagree with, I concluded. Dr. Hendricks made extensive notes. Mrs. Carter, have you considered that your children might have valid concerns, even if they're expressing them poorly? Of course I have, but their concerns are about hypothetical future problems, not current reality. They want me to make major life changes based on what might happen someday. And you're not willing to do that? Would you give up your independence based on problems that haven't occurred yet? She smiled slightly. Point taken. The evaluation continued for 3 hours. When it was finished, Dr. Hendricks packed up her materials. When will you have the results? I asked. I'll submit my report to the court within a week. The judge will review it before making any decisions about the conservatorship petition. Can you tell me anything about your impressions? I can. Tell you that this has been one of the more interesting evaluations I've conducted. You'll hear from the court soon. That evening, Michael called. How did the evaluation go? Why do you ask? Because I care about you, despite what you might think. Michael, if you cared about me, you wouldn't have hired someone to spy on me. Silence. Lisa told you? Yes, she told me. Do you have any idea how violating that feels? I needed objective information about your daily functioning. You had objective information. You chose not to believe it. Mom, please try to understand. No, Michael. You try to understand. You've crossed a line. You've treated me like a suspect instead of your mother. Whatever happens with this evaluation, our relationship has been permanently damaged. That's not what I wanted. Then you should have thought about the consequences before you started this. I hung up, my hands shaking with anger and sadness. Win or lose, my family would never be the same. But maybe that wasn't entirely a bad thing. Maybe some relationships needed to break before they could be rebuilt on healthier foundations. I just hoped there would be enough left to rebuild when this was over. The evaluation results are in. Bennett called me Thursday morning. Can you come to my office this afternoon? Good news or bad news? Let's discuss it in person. I arrived at his office with Ruth, both of us nervous about what Dr. Hendricks might have concluded. Bennett smiled as we sat down. Excellent news. Dr. Hendricks found no evidence of cognitive impairment, dementia, or inability to make reasoned decisions. Her report states that you demonstrate above-average mental acuity for your age group and sound judgment in all areas tested. Relief flooded through me. So the conservatorship petition will be dismissed? Not automatically. Your children can still argue that the evaluation missed something, or that you need protection regardless of competence. But this report seriously undermines their case. What's the next step? The court has scheduled a full hearing for next Friday. Both sides will present their complete cases, and Judge Walsh will make a final decision. Bennett explained. What to expect? My children would present their evidence of my alleged poor judgment and need for protection. We'd counter with proof of my competence and independence. There's something else, Bennett added. I've been investigating your children's finances, and I found some interesting information. He opened a file. Michael took out a second mortgage on his house 6 months ago. Lisa's been behind on her car payments. David's accumulated significant credit card debt. What does that have to do with anything? It establishes potential financial motivation for their actions. If they gained control of your assets, they could solve their own financial problems. I felt sick. You think they're doing this for money? I think their concerns might be more self-interested than they're admitting. That evening, David called. Mom, I need to tell you something. What is it? Michael's been pressuring Lisa and me to stick together on this conservatorship thing. He says if we don't present a united front, you might end up in a situation where no one can help you. What kind of pressure? He's been... financial pressure. He helped Lisa with her divorce costs, and he's been helping me with some debts. He says if we don't support him now, he can't continue helping us. My heart sank. Michael had been using his siblings' financial vulnerabilities to ensure their cooperation. David, are you telling me you've been supporting this petition because Michael threatened to cut off financial help? Not threatened exactly, but... yeah, kind of. Do you actually believe I'm incompetent? A long pause. No, Mom. I don't. You're probably sharper than all of us combined. Then why haven't you said that? Because I owe Michael money, and I can't afford to have him angry at me right now. I closed my eyes, feeling the full scope of my children's betrayal. David, what Michael's doing is manipulation. He's using your financial dependency to force your cooperation in stripping away my rights. I know, and I hate myself for it. You can fix this. You can tell the truth at the hearing. I don't know if I can go against him, Mom. I'm sorry. After he hung up, I called Bennett with the information David had shared. This is very useful, Bennett said. It shows that Michael has been orchestrating this entire situation, possibly for his own financial benefit. Can we prove that? We can certainly raise questions about his motives, and if David is willing to testify. He's scared of Michael. Then we'll have to work with what we have. The next few days passed in a blur of preparation. Ruth helped me organize character references from neighbors, church members, and community organizations. Grace called to say she wanted to testify on my behalf, though her parents had forbidden it. I'm 18 now, Grandma. They can't stop me. Are you sure you want to get involved in this? I'm already involved. This is about family, and you're my family too. Friday morning arrived gray and rainy. Ruth drove me to the courthouse where we met Bennett in the lobby. Are you ready for this? He asked. as ready as I'll ever be. The courtroom was more crowded this time. Michael, Lisa, and their lawyer occupied one side. Grace sat in the back, having driven down from college despite her parents' objections. Several of my neighbors and friends filled other seats. Judge Walsh called the hearing to order. This is a petition for conservatorship of Evelyn Carter. Mr. Hoffman, present. Your case. Hoffman stood and outlined his arguments methodically. He called Michael as the first witness. Mr. Carter, please describe your concerns about your mother's capacity. Your Honor, my mother has become increasingly isolated and suspicious. She refuses reasonable suggestions about her safety and has accused us of trying to control her for financial gain. Can you give specific examples? She won't consider moving to a safer living environment despite the clear risks of living alone in a large house. She's become paranoid about our motives, refusing help with basic tasks she used to accept. What risks do you see in her current situation? Falls, medical emergencies with no one around to help, financial vulnerability to scammers, general decline that she's either unaware of or unwilling to acknowledge. Hoffman called Lisa next, who testified tearfully about her concerns for my safety and well-being. Has your mother's behavior changed recently? Hoffman asked. She's more defensive and angry than she used to be. She seems to think we're plotting against her, which isn't like her at all. What would happen if this petition is denied? I'm afraid she'll continue to isolate herself and make decisions that put her at risk. David wasn't called to testify, I noticed. When Hoffman finished, Bennett stood for cross-examination. Mr. Carter, you testified that your mother is financially vulnerable. Are you aware that she has more money now than when your father died 10 years ago? That's not the point, isn't it? You've claimed she needs financial protection, but her assets have grown consistently. How do you explain that? She's been lucky so far. Or competent. Mr. Carter, how much money has your mother given you and your siblings over the past 5 years? Michael's face reddened. That's not relevant. Your Honor, I believe it's very relevant to the question of financial capacity and motivation. Judge Walsh nodded. Answer the question, Mr. Carter. I don't have exact figures. Bennett produced the bank records. According to these statements, your mother has given your family over $50,000 in the past 5 years. Did any of these gifts raise concerns about her judgment at the time? No, but... So her judgment was sound when she was giving you money? But questionable when she refuses to give up her independence. That's not what I said. Bennett's cross-examination revealed the financial pressures Michael had been facing, the assistance he'd been providing his siblings, and the potential benefits he would gain from controlling my assets. When he questioned Lisa, similar patterns emerged: financial stress, dependence on Michael's help, and reluctance to oppose him even when she disagreed with his methods. Then it was our turn to present our case. Bennett called Dr. Morrison first, who testified about my excellent health and mental acuity. Then Dr. Hendricks, who explained her evaluation results in detail. In my professional opinion, Dr. Hendricks concluded, Mrs. Carter demonstrates cognitive function consistent with successful aging, sound judgment in decision-making, and no evidence of any condition that would impair her ability to manage her own affairs. Ruth testified about our friendship and her observations of my daily functioning. Evelyn is one of the sharpest people I know. She manages her household, her finances, and her social obligations better than most people half her age. Several neighbors testified about my community involvement and mental sharpness. Mrs. Patterson from the library board spoke about my contributions to local literacy programs. Then Grace took the stand. Ms. Carter, how would you describe your relationship with your grandmother? She's always been incredibly important to me. When my parents got divorced, Grandma was the one who made sure I felt stable and loved. In your interactions with her, have you observed any signs of mental decline or poor judgment? None at all. She's exactly the same as she's always been. Kind, smart, funny, and incredibly strong. Why did you choose to testify today? Because someone needs to speak for Grandma as a person, not just as someone's mother. She's taught me that respecting people means respecting their right to make their own choices. Finally, Bennett called me as the last witness. Mrs. Carter, why do you believe this conservatorship petition should be denied? Because I am a competent adult who deserves the same rights as any other competent adult. My children disagree with my life choices, but disagreement isn't grounds for removing someone's civil rights. What would you say to their concerns about your safety? I'd say that safety isn't the highest value. Dignity, autonomy, and the right to make my own mistakes are also important. I've lived 73 years making my own decisions. I'm not ready to stop now. What do you hope will come from this hearing? I hope my children will remember that love means respecting someone's autonomy, not controlling their choices. And I hope they'll realize that I raised them to be better than this. When all testimony was finished, Judge Walsh recessed to review the evidence. We waited in the hallway, the tension palpable. Michael and Lisa avoided eye contact with me, while Grace sat beside Ruth and me, providing quiet support. After an hour, Judge Walsh called us back. I've reviewed all testimony and evidence presented today. This is a case where adult children, motivated by genuine concern, but also by their own interests, have attempted to override their mother's right to self-determination. She looked directly at Michael and Lisa. While I understand your concerns about Mrs. Carter's welfare, concern alone is not sufficient grounds for conservatorship. The evidence clearly shows that Mrs. Carter is mentally competent, financially responsible, and capable of making reasoned decisions about her life. She turned to me. Mrs. Carter, the petition for conservatorship is denied. You retain full control over your person and property. Relief washed over me, but Judge Walsh wasn't finished. However, I want to address this family directly. What I've witnessed here today is deeply troubling. Adult children should be their parents' advocates, not their adversaries. I strongly encourage all of you to seek family counseling to repair the damage that's been done to these relationships. As we left the courthouse, Michael stormed past without speaking. Lisa paused, tears in her eyes. Mom, I'm sorry. We were wrong. Yes, I said quietly. You were. But for the first time in months, I felt like my daughter was seeing me, clearly. The battle was over. Now came the harder task of rebuilding what had been broken. Mom, can we talk? Lisa stood on my doorstep 3 days after the hearing, looking exhausted and ashamed. Come in, I said, though I wasn't sure I was ready for whatever conversation was coming. We sat in the living room where so many of our family battles had taken place. Lisa twisted her hands in her lap, struggling to find words. I keep thinking about what the judge said, about us being your advocates instead of your adversaries. What do you think about that? I think she was right, and I think we lost sight of who you are in all of this. I waited, letting her work through her thoughts. Michael was so convinced so sure that we were saving you from some terrible fate. And I got caught up in that, instead of trusting what I could see with my own eyes. What could you see with your own eyes? That you're the same person you've always been. Strong, independent, capable. Maybe even stronger than before, because you fought back when we tried to diminish you. Lisa, why didn't you stand up for me when you knew I was right? She started crying. Because I was scared. Michael helped me through the divorce, financially and emotionally. When he said we needed to stick together on this, I felt like I owed him my loyalty. Even when that loyalty meant betraying me, I told myself we were helping you. It was easier than admitting we were wrong. I studied my daughter's face, seeing genuine remorse alongside the tears. What about David? Is he sorry too? David's a mess. He knows he was wrong, but he's terrified of confronting Michael. He owes him a lot of money. And Michael? Lisa's expression hardened. Michael's furious. He's convinced you manipulated the court somehow. He's talking about appealing the decision. My heart sank. On what grounds? I don't think he has any real grounds. Bennett said appeals are very difficult in these cases, but Michael doesn't like to lose. That evening, Michael called. His voice was cold, controlled. I hope you're satisfied, Mom. Satisfied with what? With destroying this family. I didn't destroy anything, Michael. I defended myself. You turned my sister and brother against me. You made us look like villains in court. You made yourselves look like villains by your actions. We were trying to protect you. No, you were trying to control me. There's a difference. You're going to regret this. When something happens and you need help, don't expect us to come running. Michael, do you hear yourself? You're threatening to abandon me because I wouldn't let you control my life. I'm stating a fact. You've made it clear. You don't want our help or our concern. I want your love and respect. I've never wanted your control. Same thing, apparently. He hung up, and I knew our relationship might be irreparable. The son I had raised, sacrificed for, and loved unconditionally had become someone I barely recognized. The next morning, David came by unexpectedly. Mom, I need to apologize. All right. I mean really apologize. What I did was unforgivable. Then why did you do it? He slumped into a chair, looking older than his 42 years. Because I'm weak. Because I've been depending on Michael to bail me out of my mistakes for so long that I forgot how to think for myself. David, you're not weak. You're human. But you made choices that hurt me deeply. I know, and I don't know how to fix it. Start by being honest, with yourself and with me. He looked up, hope flickering in his eyes. How? Tell me what you really think about this whole situation. I think Michael's become obsessed with being right, even when he's clearly wrong. I think Lisa and I got swept up in his certainty because it was easier than making our own judgments. And I think you showed more courage in that courtroom than any of us have shown in years. That's a start. Mom, is there any way you can forgive me? I can forgive you, David, but trust has to be rebuilt gradually. I'll do whatever it takes. Then start by standing up to Michael when he's wrong. Not just with me, but in general. Stop letting him make your decisions for you. David nodded slowly. That's going to be hard. Most worthwhile things are. Over the following weeks, a strange new dynamic emerged in our family. Lisa visited regularly, trying to rebuild our relationship through small gestures and honest conversations. David came by occasionally, awkward but sincere in his efforts to make amends. Michael remained absent and angry, but his influence over his siblings was clearly waning. He's not handling the loss of control well, Lisa told me during one of our coffee conversations. He expected us to stay loyal to him, no matter what. And now? Now I'm remembering what it's like to make my own decisions about our relationship. Grace continued to visit, and our bond grew stronger. She'd started bringing friends occasionally. Young women who were impressed by what they called my badass grandmother energy. You showed them it's possible to fight back, Grace explained. A lot of their grandparents just accept whatever their families decide for them. I was lucky to have good legal help and friends who supported me. You were lucky to have courage. Ruth and I had become even closer through the ordeal. She'd seen me at my most vulnerable and stood by me without wavering. You know, she said one afternoon as we worked in her garden, this whole experience might have been the best thing that could have happened to you. How so? You discovered how strong you really are, and you set boundaries that needed setting. It came at a high cost. The best discoveries usually do. One evening, about 6 weeks after the hearing, I was reading in the living room when the doorbell rang. I opened it to find Michael standing on my doorstep. "Can I come in?" I stepped aside, and he entered hesitantly. We sat across from each other in the living room, the distance between us feeling enormous. "I've been thinking about what happened," he began. And I think maybe I was wrong about some things. Such as, maybe I was more worried about what might happen to you than about what you actually wanted. It wasn't a full apology, but it was the first crack in his certainty I'd seen. "Michael, why was it so important to you to control my living situation?" He was quiet for a long time. "Because when Dad died, I promised him I'd take care of you." Taking care of someone doesn't mean making their decisions for them. I know that now, but I was scared that if something happened to you, it would be my fault for not doing enough. And you thought the solution was to remove my right to make choices. I thought the solution was to make sure you were safe, even if you didn't like it. Michael, I raised you to be better than that. I raised you to respect people's autonomy, even when you disagreed with their choices. I know. I forgot that lesson somewhere along the way. We sat in silence for several minutes. "Is there any way we can fix this?" he asked finally. "I don't know. Trust, once broken, is very hard to repair. But possible. Possible, but not easy. And it would require you to truly understand what you did wrong, not just admit you were wrong about tactics. I'm willing to try. Then start by accepting that I am the only person qualified to make decisions about my life. Not because I'm infallible, but because they're my decisions to make. Even if I think you're making a mistake? Especially then. Love means trusting someone to live their own life, even when you choose differently." Michael nodded slowly. "That's going to be hard for me. Most worthwhile things are." He looked at me with something approaching his old affection. "David said the same thing to me last week. David's learning some important lessons. We all are, I think." When he left, I felt cautiously optimistic for the first time in months. The road back to a healthy relationship would be long and difficult, but at least we'd taken the first step. I was still Evelyn Carter, mother, widow, fighter. But now I was also something I hadn't been before, a woman who knew her own worth and wouldn't let anyone convince her otherwise. The quiet pillar had found her voice, and she wasn't planning to be quiet again. The family dynamics are definitely shifting. Dr. Sarah Chen, the family therapist Judge Walsh had recommended, observed during our third session together. Lisa, David, and I sat in her comfortable office, working through the aftermath of our legal battle. Michael had declined to join us, claiming he needed more time to process everything. Evelyn, how are you feeling about the changes in your relationships with Lisa and David? Cautiously optimistic, I replied. I can see they're making genuine efforts, but trust takes time to rebuild. Lisa, what's different for you now? I'm realizing how much I'd been depending on Michael to make decisions, not just about Mom, but about my own life. It's scary but also liberating to think for myself again. Can you give me an example? Last week, Michael suggested I should ask Mom to help with Emma's college tuition. In the past, I would have just done it because he thought it was a good idea. This time, I thought about what I actually wanted and needed. And what did you decide? That if I need help, I should ask for it directly and honestly, not because my brother told me to. Dr. Chen turned to David. What about you? How are things changing? I'm trying to become financially independent from Michael, he said. I got a second job and I'm working on paying him back. It's hard, but I can't have my relationship with my mother depend on whether I owe my brother money. That sounds like a significant step. How does it feel? Terrifying and relieving at the same time. Dr. Chen made notes, then looked at all three of us. One thing I'm hearing is that the conservatorship battle, as painful as it was, forced everyone to examine patterns that had been in place for years. What do you mean? Lisa asked. Evelyn, you'd fallen into a role where you gave everything to your children, but didn't assert your own needs. Lisa and David, you'd become accustomed to having decisions made for you, first by your mother and then by Michael. Michael took on a controlling role that nobody really questioned. So the crisis forced us to confront unhealthy patterns? I asked. Exactly. Sometimes families need a disruption to recognize when their dynamics have become dysfunctional. Over the following months, life settled into a new rhythm. Lisa visited weekly, and we slowly rebuilt our relationship based on mutual respect rather than old patterns of dependency. David made significant progress toward independence, both financial and emotional. He landed a better job and moved into his own apartment for the first time in years. I forgot what it felt like to make my own decisions without checking with someone else first, he told me during one of our phone calls. How does it feel? Scary but good. Really good. Grace graduated college and decided to spend the summer with me before starting graduate school. I want to learn from you, she said. How to be strong, how to stand up for myself, how to build the kind of life I actually want instead of the kind other people expect me to want. Those are important lessons, I agreed. Will you teach me? I'll share what I've learned, but ultimately, you'll have to figure out your own path. We spent long afternoons talking about choices, independence, and the difference between helping someone and controlling them. Grace was an eager student, and teaching her helped me articulate lessons I'd learned through painful experience. Ruth and I continued our friendship, stronger than ever. You know, she said one morning as we tended her roses, you've become something of a local legend. What do you mean? Margaret from the senior center told me 3 different women have asked her about that lawyer you used. Apparently, adult children questioning their parents' competence is more common than we realized. That's both sad and encouraging. Sad that it's necessary, encouraging that people are fighting back. I'd started attending a support group for seniors who'd faced similar challenges, sharing stories and strategies with others who understood. The unique pain of being betrayed by family members was healing in ways I hadn't expected. The hardest part, Eleanor, a woman whose son had tried to have her declared incompetent, told the group, was realizing that my own child saw me as a burden instead of a person. But the most empowering part, added Harold, Ruth's late husband's friend, was discovering I still had fight left in me. Michael remained distant, though he did send a card on my birthday with a note saying he was working on understanding what had happened between us. Lisa served as a go-between sometimes, updating me on his state of mind. He's struggling with the idea that he was wrong, she told me. Michael's always prided himself on being the responsible one, the one who takes care of everyone else. And now he's realizing that sometimes taking care of people means leaving them alone to live their own lives. Is he getting help? He's seeing a therapist individually. He says he's not ready for family sessions yet, but maybe someday. I felt sad about the distance between Michael and me, but I'd learned not to sacrifice my well-being for the comfort of people who'd already shown they were willing to sacrifice mine for theirs. Grace often asked about my relationship with Michael. Do you miss him, Grandma? I miss the relationship we used to have before all this happened, but I don't miss being treated like a problem to be solved. Do you think you'll ever be close again? I hope so, but it would have to be a different kind of closeness, based on mutual respect, rather than his need to control and my willingness to be controlled. As autumn approached, a full year since the first intervention in my kitchen, I reflected on how much had changed. I was still living in my own home, managing my own finances, and making my own decisions. But more than that, I'd reclaimed my sense of self as someone whose thoughts and preferences mattered. The relationships with my children were forever altered, but perhaps that was for the best. Lisa and David were learning to relate to me as an adult, rather than as a parent figure who existed primarily to meet their needs. Michael remained distant, but even that was honest in a way our previous relationship hadn't been. I think, I told Dr. Chen during one of our final sessions, that this whole experience taught me the difference between being loved and being respected. How so? My children always loved me, but they didn't respect me as an autonomous person with the right to make my own choices. Love without respect becomes control. And now I insist on both. I won't accept love that comes with the price of giving up my autonomy. 2 years had passed since the conservatorship hearing, and I was sitting in my garden on a crisp October morning, watching the leaves turn gold and crimson. The seasons had cycled twice since that day in court, and with each passing month, I'd grown more certain of who I was and what I wanted from the years ahead. "Grandma, you have visitors," Grace called from the kitchen door. She'd moved back to town after graduate school and rented a small apartment downtown, but she still came by most mornings for coffee and what she called life lessons. I looked up to see Lisa walking toward me, but she wasn't alone. Behind her, moving somewhat hesitantly, was Michael. "Hello, Mom," he said, stopping a few feet away as if uncertain of his welcome. "Hello, Michael." I gestured to the garden chairs I'd arranged around my small patio table. "Please, sit." The three of us settled into an awkward silence broken only by the rustling of leaves and the distant sound of children playing in the neighborhood. "I asked Michael to come with me today," Lisa said finally. "We've been talking, and he has some things he wants to say." Michael cleared his throat, looking older than his 47 years. The confident, controlling man who'd orchestrated the intervention seemed to have been replaced by someone more uncertain, more human. "Mom, I've been seeing Dr. Martinez for almost a year now," he began, "working through a lot of things." "I'm glad you're getting help," I said simply. "She's helped me understand something important. About Dad's death, about the promise I made him, about what I thought it meant to take care of you." He paused, struggling with the words. "When Dad was dying, he made me promise to look after you. But I think I heard control when he said care for. Dr. Martinez helped me realize that Dad would be horrified by what I tried to do." "What do you think he actually meant?" I asked. "That I should be available if you needed help. Not that I should decide what kind of help you needed." His voice cracked slightly. "And definitely not that I should try to take away your right to choose your own life." I felt something shift in my chest. Not forgiveness exactly, but the beginning of understanding. "Michael, why didn't you just talk to me about your concerns instead of going straight to legal action?" "Because—" He stopped, took a deep breath. "Because I was terrified after Dad died. The thought of losing you too, especially if I felt like I could have prevented it, was unbearable. So I convinced myself that controlling the situation was the same as protecting you. And now? Now I understand that trying to control someone you love is actually a form of abandoning them. You can't love someone and refuse to respect their personhood at the same time." Lisa reached over and squeezed my hand. "Mom, we all learned things we needed to learn. Painful things." "What have you learned?" I asked her. "That I spent most of my adult life looking for someone else to make my decisions. First you, then Michael. I never really developed confidence in my own judgment. And now? Now I'm learning to trust myself. It's terrifying sometimes, but it's also the only way to really live." Michael leaned forward in his chair. "Mom, I know I can't undo what I did. I know the trust between us is broken, maybe permanently, but I want you to know that I see you now, really see you, as the strong, capable, independent woman you've always been." "Thank you for saying that. I also want you to know that I'll never again presume to make decisions about your life, even if I disagree with your choices, even if I'm worried about you. I promise to respect your autonomy." "That means a great deal to me, Michael." We sat quietly for a moment, watching a cardinal land on the bird feeder I'd hung from the old oak tree. "Where do we go from here?" Lisa asked. "Slowly," I said. "Honestly. One conversation at a time. Would you be willing to try family dinners again?" Michael asked tentatively. "Maybe once a month. David's been asking about it." "How is David?" "Good. Really good, actually. He paid me back everything he owed me last month. Got a promotion at work. He's even started dating someone." "I'm glad to hear that. God, he wants to apologize to you again, but he's worried you're tired of hearing apologies." "I'm never tired of genuine remorse," I said. "But I am tired of apologies that aren't followed by changed behavior." "His behavior has changed," Lisa said. "He's become much more independent, more confident. The whole experience was a wake-up call for him, too." That evening, after Michael and Lisa had gone, Grace and I made dinner together, a ritual we'd established over the past year. "How do you feel about what happened today?" she asked as we chopped vegetables. "Hopeful but cautious," I replied. "Michael said the right things, but I need to see if his actions match his words over time." "Do you think you'll ever fully trust him again?" "I don't know, but I'm open to the possibility. People can change, Grace, but they have to want to change, and they have to do the work. What kind of work? The hard work of examining why they did what they did, understanding the impact of their actions, and making different choices going forward. Are you proud of how you handled everything? I considered her question carefully. I'm proud that I fought back. I'm proud that I didn't let fear or guilt make me give up my independence. But I'm also sad that it came to that. Why sad? Because I wish my children had trusted me enough to include me in their concerns instead of trying to override my autonomy. I wish they'd seen me as a partner in solving problems, rather than as a problem to be solved. The next month, we did have a family dinner. All 5 of us. David had indeed brought his new girlfriend, Sarah, gathered around my dining room table for the first time in over 2 years. The conversation was stilted at first, everyone being carefully polite. But gradually, as we shared stories and laughed at David's terrible jokes, something like the old family dynamic began to emerge, except healthier this time. "Mom," David said as we were clearing dishes, "I want you to know that I'm seeing a therapist too now. Dr. Peterson has helped me understand why I was so dependent on Michael's approval. And what did you discover? That I never really learned to trust my own judgment because I was always looking for someone else to tell me what to do. First you, then Michael. I'm sorry if I contributed to that pattern," I said. "You didn't do it on purpose, but I think I needed to learn to stand on my own feet, and this crisis forced me to do that." "How does it feel?" "Scary, but good. Really, really good." As the evening wound down, Michael pulled me aside. "Mom, there's something else I want to tell you." "What's that?" "I've been volunteering at the senior center, helping people navigate elder law issues, helping them understand their rights." "That's wonderful, Michael." "It's my way of trying to make amends. Not just to you, but to all the seniors whose families might be tempted to make the same mistakes I made." "What have you learned from that work?" "That what happened with us happens more often than I realized, and that most families don't recover from it the way we're trying to." "Why do you think we're different?" "Because you fought back. Because you showed us that love without respect isn't really love at all." Over the following months, our family slowly knitted itself back together, but in a new pattern. The old dynamics, where I was the caregiver and they were the recipients, had been replaced by something more balanced. Lisa started asking for my advice rather than assuming I'd just handle things for her. David shared his problems with me but made his own decisions about how to solve them. Michael offered help when asked, but didn't push solutions I hadn't requested. "It's like we're learning to be family all over again," Grace observed one afternoon, as we watched Lisa and her daughter Emma plant bulbs in my garden. "Maybe that's what needed to happen," I replied. "Maybe the old way of being family had run its course." "Are you happy with how things turned out?" "I'm happy that I didn't give up my independence. I'm happy that my children are learning to be more autonomous themselves. I'm sad about the pain we all went through, but I think we're all stronger now." "Even Michael?" "Especially Michael. He's learning that he doesn't have to control everyone around him to be a good son or brother. That's got to be a relief." As winter settled in, I found myself busier than I'd been in years. The support group I'd joined had asked me to facilitate newcomer sessions. Ruth and I had started a book club that met at the community center. I'd begun taking art classes, something I'd always wanted to do but never made time for. "You know," Ruth said one snowy afternoon as we painted watercolor landscapes, "you're not the same person you were 3 years ago." "How so?" "You're more yourself if that makes sense. Like you've stopped trying to be what other people needed you to be and started being who you actually are. I think you're right. For so many years I defined myself by my relationships. Wife, mother, grandmother. Those are important parts of who I am. But they're not the whole story. What's the whole story? I'm still figuring that out. That's the exciting part. One evening in February, I got an unexpected phone call. Mrs. Carter, this is Judge Walsh. I was surprised to hear from her. Hello, Your Honor. How can I help you? I have a somewhat unusual request. I'm speaking at a conference on elder rights next month, and I'd like to include your case as an example of how the system can work when people have good legal representation and the courage to fight for their rights. What would that involve? Would you be willing to be interviewed about your experience? Your identity would be kept confidential, of course. I thought about it for a moment. Yes, I'd be honored to participate. Wonderful. I think your story could help other families understand the importance of including seniors in decisions about their own lives, rather than making those decisions for them. After I hung up, I called Grace to tell her about the judge's request. Grandma, that's amazing. You're going to help other people in similar situations. I hope so. I keep thinking about what might have happened if I hadn't had Bennett to help me, or if I'd been too intimidated to fight back. But you did fight back, and now you can help others do the same. The interview took place in Judge Walsh's chambers on a Tuesday morning in March. She asked thoughtful questions about my experience, and I found myself articulating things I'd learned, but hadn't fully put into words before. What would you say to adult children who are genuinely concerned about a parent's safety or judgment? She asked. I'd say that concern is understandable and even admirable, but the solution is communication, not control. Talk to your parent about your concerns, ask what they need, offer specific help with specific problems. But don't assume that your concern gives you the right to make decisions for another adult. And what would you say to seniors who might be facing similar situations? That they have rights, even when their children disagree with their choices. That getting older doesn't mean giving up autonomy, and that sometimes you have to fight for respect, even from people who love you. Any final thoughts? That love and control aren't the same thing. Real love means trusting someone to live their own life even when you choose differently for them. A few weeks after the interview, I received a package from Judge Walsh. Inside was a transcript of her conference presentation and a note. Dear Mrs. Carter, your story has already helped several families I've encountered since the conference. Thank you for your courage in sharing it. You've made a difference. That evening, as I sat in my garden watching the first spring flowers push through the soil, I reflected on the long journey from that terrible morning when I'd found my children in my kitchen, planning my life without me. I was 73 years old, living independently in my own home, managing my own affairs, and making my own choices. My relationships with my children were different now. More honest, more respectful, more equal. Michael and I had slowly rebuilt trust through consistent small interactions. He still worried about me, but he'd learned to express concern without trying to take control. Lisa had become more confident in her own decision-making and related to me more as a friend than as someone who existed to solve her problems. David had grown into his independence and seemed genuinely happier for it. Grace was thriving in her career and credited our conversations with helping her understand the importance of maintaining her autonomy in relationships. You taught me, she'd said recently, that being loved doesn't mean being controlled, and loving someone doesn't mean making their decisions for them. As the sun set behind the trees, painting the sky in shades of pink and gold, I felt something I hadn't experienced in years. Complete satisfaction with my life as it was, not as someone else thought it should be. I was Evelyn Carter, mother, widow, grandmother, artist, advocate, and most importantly, a woman who knew her own worth and refused to let anyone convince her otherwise. The quiet pillar had not only found her voice, she had learned to use it in service of her own dignity and the dignity of others, and she was far from finished.